All right, everybody, welcome into the live feed. This is Talking SEC. We are recapping SEC Week 9, and joining me to do so is Brendan Eisenman, who I can now say from last word on college football, where he now covers Arkansas Razorbacks. He covers LSU for LSU Wire, and he has his podcast, the LSU Breakdown Podcast. Brendan, we're recording this on a Sunday afternoon around 2:30 Central Time, but how's it going, man?
It's going good, man. How are you?
Going good, going good. This is kind of a throwback to last year. Me and you on a Sunday afternoon recapping everything happening in the SEC, and hopefully maybe we'll get some viewers and some people will check us out while we do this. And if you are one of those people, you can. We are live on Facebook, both on my personal Facebook account and on my Phillip Jordan professional page. So if you have a question or topic idea or any comment from yesterday's games in the SEC or college football overall, please go to the bottom into comment section and leave a comment. And if on YouTube, which is going up later, probably on Monday when the audio podcast will launch or release, you can put a comment on there too. And on the next episode, I will address it as well. And Brandon, it was an interesting week. But I gotta say this, and me and you did some NFL picks, a video last week picking NFL games. So we're going to pull the curtain back, knew a little bit about that you were coming back to Last Word, but it was not official yet. So welcome back to Last Word on College Football. Is the first thing I want to do here.
Yeah, thanks, man. I was going for probably close to a year when I moved over to LSU, where I kind of left. I covered Troy for a little while, but I left. But I wanted to get back to Last Word because it was the very first writing gig I ever had. I was actually still in high school when I started writing for Last Word, and you know what, man, it was just kind of time to get back. And management gave me the choice of Ole Miss or Arkansas, and as bad as I wanted to pick Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, I kind of wanted to ride the wave with Sam Pittman and what their staff is doing at Arkansas. I kind of take a deep dive into them. So it's been a lot of fun the first couple of days back over there.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you back. And I guess Saturday, your first Saturday back had to be a little bit interesting for you because I just said you cover Arkansas for Last Word, but you cover LSU for LSU Wire, so you kind of had to have a hand in each basket on this week.
Yeah, certainly. It was kind of a best of both worlds type of thing. Getting to cover both teams for one game. Really, it was a lot of fun. Game was interesting too.
Yeah, it was. It was a really good game. One of the better games of the day in the SEC, which it was two games that came down to the wire, but a lot of interesting results as always in the conference. And I guess for me, talking about you doing both teams, I did at one time a website I don't think no longer exists. Before I was the Last Word called southeasternfootball.com, and I did Alabama and Auburn. So you doing LSU and Arkansas, which is a rivalry game for people who don't know. The SEC doesn't want it to be a rivalry game anymore, and it should be played on the day after Thanksgiving. That is my yearly rant on that. It's just stupid trying to force the Missouri Arkansas rivalry on us. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. SEC put this game back to after Thanksgiving, but I know I've got your opinion on that, Brandon. But I made it on my point on Facebook, Twitter. But what's your thoughts on the where they put the LSU and Arkansas game now?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think it needs to go back to being the day after Thanksgiving. And look, I don't mind LSU playing A&M, the weekend of Thanksgiving. But I feel like the LSU and Arkansas rivalry just kind of means more because they had played so much longer the day after Thanksgiving than LSU and A&M have played since A&M joined the SEC a couple of years back. And just move LSU A&M to the week that LSU Arkansas is, and put LSU Arkansas back the day after Thanksgiving. That's how they need to fix this.
Yeah, I guess, and our former managing editor, Last Word, we still hear a lot from him. Mike Laval, he commented, he let me know, or he put his opinion out there that maybe it's just because they want to make a more emphasis on the LSU and Texas A&M rivalry, which that has become pretty heated the last couple of years since A&M has joined the conference.
Yeah, it certainly has. I mean, you go back to 2018 with the 74-72 7 overtime game, and then LSU winning, 5-6 straight from 2012 to 2017 before that loss, and then last year. So, yeah, that rivalry is heating up, and I kind of understand where the SEC is coming from with that. Maybe they want to implicate that rivalry a little bit more. But, I'm still going to stay on the course that LSU and Arkansas is still it'll forever be the better rivalry. I mean, A&M just joined the conference 8 years ago.
Yeah.
LSU's been playing Arkansas a lot longer. So
the battle for the Golden Boot, and that they did play yesterday. That was an 11 o'clock game, and the line jumped around a lot on this game. I think at the beginning of last week, Arkansas was favored. Then, of course, they had some COVID reasons for players not playing on Saturday. And I think the line jumped over to LSU. Last year, LSU was like a 40-point favorite in this contest. But looking at it, I think LSU looked at it too in this game. They saw, okay, Arkansas is without some guys on the defensive front, and I think that's where LSU really made a point to show that weakness was there for Arkansas, and they did so very well. I mean, time of possession in this game. I mean, LSU had the ball a lot, 41 minutes, 43 seconds. Arkansas only had the ball for 18-17. So, I mean, first off, just jumping off of that with LSU, it just seemed like Coach Orgeron and the offense, they really wanted to make a point. We are going to win the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, it certainly did. With Arkansas having the COVID issues and a couple of players out, I think the game plan for the offense was just really win the line of scrimmage, get the running game established, which is what they did. LSU had a really, really good day running the ball. TJ Finley looked solid at quarterback. He was 27 of 42 for 271 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tyrion Davis-Price, a sophomore, he had 104 yards and a touchdown on 24 carries. So it was another 100-yard rushing game for him. And I think LSU really took advantage of the depletions from Arkansas's defense. And even though it was a 3-point game, I liked what I saw from LSU's offense, but I really, really liked what I saw from the defense much more than so the offense.
Yeah, defensively, LSU played much better against the run. Felipe Franks was the leading rusher in this game for Arkansas at 43. Arkansas had a total of, I believe, got it right here, 104 yards. But they did give up the big play again. LSU kind of looked at times like they have all year, and I don't understand what's going on there with the secondary. I mean, this is, DBU. That's what LSU is supposed to be, one of the best programs in the country when it comes to defensive backs. But once again, that sometimes during the game, and Franks hit some big passes, they kind of looked like they were out of position and out of sorts.
Yeah, it did look like that. It was kind of a conflict because they looked really good to start with, had Arkansas have a couple 3-and-outs. But, yeah, they gave up a couple of big plays. And, look, they're going to do that. They're not going to, just bat pass it down or pick them off every single time. But it seems like they're getting back on track to where they were last year and where they have been for so many years. Because through the first 5 games, LSU was horribly bad, giving up big plays. I mean, on average, they probably gave up at least 6 or 7, long passing plays a game. But they kind of took that down a little bit, and just all around defensively, I think they played better. But they're still going to have the issues just because I don't know if it's still they're just trying to adjust to Pelini's defense or what it is. But I think now that's really the only issue they need to fix is giving up the long passing plays. And look, I know it was Arkansas, but man, they held Arkansas to 0 of 10 on third down, and that was a really, really big win for that LSU defense. Was I think one of the keys going into the game for LSU defensively was to hold Arkansas on third down, and they did that in a big way on Saturday.
Yeah, they caught the money down for a reason. I had that right here in my notes. That like you said, that Arkansas was 0 and 10. They had that 1 4th down at the end. Of course, they got within field goal range, but the field goal was blocked about a minute and a half, 2 minutes left in the game. That LSU was able to bleed the clock out and get the win. I will say this too at LSU on this game, and with TJ Finley, played much better than he did against Auburn. I mean, it wasn't the same performance you saw out of South Carolina, but it was kind of more maybe what you will see on a weekly basis out of him. Threw a lot of passes, over 40 passes, but he looked a lot more comfortable, a lot more confident, and he didn't try to force the issue like a couple times he did against Auburn. So he did show that improvement from the last game.
Yeah, he certainly did. It looked like, with the given 2 weeks off that they had, it should have only been 1 week. But with given 2 weeks off, he had that extra time to kind of get his mechanics right, get his footwork right, work on his throws. And he really did that. He showed a lot of improvement, and I think they're in good hands going forward with Finley. But, Phillip, one thing that I was kind of disappointed in was the fact that earlier last week, Ed Ogeron said that, they may play both Finley and Max Johnson. And I actually missed the last little bit of the game because I had to go back to Dothan for early Thanksgiving with the family. But just looking at the stats, I don't think Johnson played, but
he didn't.
And really, there was no reason for him to. I mean, Finley played well, but if if you say that you may play both quarterbacks, let's see both of them. Even if Finley is having a good game, throw Johnson in there for just one play on like a crucial third down, let him get a 2 or 3 yard pass. Um, but overall, I thought Finley played really well. And look, even get the Auburn, the bad performance at Auburn, just throw it out the window right now. Because he's slowly improving, and I think that moving forward, these final 4 or 5 games for LSU, I think they're going to be fine at quarterback.
Yeah, doesn't want to completely ignore Arkansas here. I mean, they played well too. They hit the big plays. They weren't able to run the ball, and they were without some guys. Last week they were without their head coach and Sam Pittman. But once again, impressed with Felipe Franks. He has done a fantastic job of quarterback this team this year. Going into the season, I did not give Arkansas much of a chance. I'm actually looking at my predictions up here in front of me on my desk. I had Arkansas going 0-10. Much better team than that. I mean, look, this game could have went either way toward the end. Also, the Auburn game, look, there's a lot of controversy still when you ask Arkansas fans about that. So, Sam Pittman, I mean, I think going into 2021 next year, I think Arkansas fans have a lot to look forward to. And yes, this was a loss, and maybe now losing to LSU, you may not can get to 5-5, 4-6, may be your best bet if you still play the Alabama game at the end of the year. But overall, what you can see on the field, what Sam Pittman's done with this program, they're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, certainly. Look, after going 0-16 the last 2 years between 2018 and 2019 in conference play, you're sitting at 3-5 right now. I mean, you were 3-4 coming into this game. Yeah, your head coach was out, but you still played, pretty well against a battered LSU team that's looked, bad all but 1 or 2 games this year. I continue to be impressed with Felipe Franks. I was really impressed with him when they went down to Gainesville 2 weeks ago at Florida, even though they lost 63-35. He looked really, really good against LSU. And, what Pittman and that staff have done at Arkansas just to turn this thing around. And look, it's going to be a slow turnaround for Arkansas, so the fan base has to be patient. They're not just going to go, 4-6 and then go undefeated next year. But it's going to be a slow process for Arkansas, but they're slowly on the creep up here. And I had Arkansas winning this game 45-31 in my preview article for over at Last Word. Look, I was definitely wrong on that, but man, I was really impressed with what I saw from Arkansas on Saturday against LSU.
Yeah, I was too. And then, like I said, every time LSU got a good lead or they got up or had a long drive, Arkansas did come back and answer with a big play. Also at 11 o'clock, we had Florida playing Vanderbilt, and Florida wins this game 38-17. But I'll let that score fool you. I mean, Florida had trouble with Vanderbilt first half. They were only up 17-10 at halftime, and that was a score right toward the end of the first half. Vanderbilt was able to move the ball on Florida, and Florida moved the ball throughout the first half, but they, have inconsistency issues, especially again on the defense, which has been a problem most of the year for Florida. Anyways, now they did pull away there in the second half to win, like I said, 38-17. Another good game for Trask, throwing for 383, 2 touchdowns. But man, I tell you what, Vanderbilt's got a good quarterback, and I hope maybe they can find some talent to put around him. And Ken Seals, he had on the day, he was 22-34, 319, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. But for Florida, it's one of them things. It's an 11 o'clock game. You've had a lot of good talk about you in the media this past week. So maybe they're looking over Vanderbilt a little bit. But still a good win for Florida moving forward. And look, I still got to say this: Ken Seals at Vanderbilt. I really like what that freshman quarterback is doing, and he's got a bright future if they can get some talent around him at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Seals does certainly have a bright future. And look, it's a good win for Florida and not even a bad loss for Vanderbilt. They hung in there with them for the longest time. I was chatting with some buddies of mine yesterday. I was like, look, Vanderbilt's beating Florida right now, y'all. Like, this might actually happen. But Florida got it together. They pulled it out in the second half. But man, just the way that Vanderbilt played defensively against that potent Florida offense in the first half. I mean, I know Florida's got the defensive issues, but man, Kyle Trask is still my Heisman favorite. And I know a lot of people may say that, he didn't play too well in the first half against Vanderbilt, but I mean, so what? It's an 11 o'clock kick. Florida's not used to playing in Nashville at 11 o'clock in the morning. But good win for Florida. I think they keep it on track. And even though Vanderbilt's 0-7 now, they got some hope a little bit. If they can get talent around Seals and get that offense working, I think Vanderbilt can turn this around too.
Yeah, they've had, it's we're Vanderbilt fans. You see that 0-7, but you got to know you do have something that you can build around. so far. We have a comment over here in the chat, so I can go ahead and people, you're going to see my hand, but let's see. South Carolina had a similar game with Florida. Mason fighting for a job, in my opinion. So we've got the situation with Muschamp's gone to South Carolina. We'll get to them in a little bit. But when you look at Derek Mason, I honestly believe I think Vanderbilt just doesn't care. I don't think the higher ups care about the athletics really at this point. I don't see them firing Derek Mason this year. That's just my opinion. Where are you on that?
Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, even though they're 0-7, I just really don't think they're worried about it. I mean, look, we all know Vanderbilt's a baseball school, and sometimes a basketball school. Their football team can be good, once in a blue moon. But I don't see Mason getting fired. I think they're going to stick it out with him just because, look, they've already been through all these troubles with him really since he's been there. So what if they go 0-10? We're in COVID right now. I know Vanderbilt's losing money athletically in their department. They're not going to want to, pay him out to leave, or fire him for that matter. So I think he stays, and then next year maybe they reevaluate if they're downhill again.
All right, and before we move on, put this last comment up by Savannah Webster. She got another comment. I like Mason, but his name keeps getting mentioned on hot seat. It's just I don't think, and this is my opinion here on this. I just don't think that there's the boosters at Vanderbilt that there are at the other schools that are going to want to put pressure to get rid of Mason like it is. Like obviously boosters took care of Muschamp, and also at other schools in the conference. That's kind of like the difference I think with Vanderbilt because do they really think okay we can change the coach here? But pretty much other than James Franklin, it's pretty much been the same situation here. Losing a lot, being the worst team in the SEC. So, I guess that's my 2 cents on that. Another team that did win big, the number one team in the country, Alabama, took care of Kentucky 63-6. And look, Kentucky came in this game shorthanded. Running back Chris Rodriguez, their best running back, was out. I mean, even if they hadn't came in this game shorthanded due to COVID, they were going to have some issues in Alabama. Alabama's just really good. And honestly, you can look at this thing. Alabama really played that great of a game. This was one of those deals where Alabama was just so much better than Kentucky, and really going into Kentucky didn't have a shot.
Yeah. I mean, what can you really say about this? I mean, we kind of knew Bama was going to blow them out. Listen, I'm that's not dogging Kentucky. They gave it all they could, but when you're playing at Bryant-Denny, especially at night, against the number one team in the country that has a really really good offense, it's hard to stop them. Look, Devontae Smith set the SEC record for touchdowns. So, I mean, look, Alabama's got a really good team. I didn't give Kentucky much of a chance in this game either. I mean, they could have put up more than 3 points, I thought, going in. I didn't really think Bama would put up 63 either, but, man, it is Nick Saban. It's Alabama. And, look, Kentucky's just kind of on the downfall. After what happened at Auburn to open up the year, they just they've taken a step back in a small way. And over the last couple of years, Kentucky's been really good. Like Mark Stoops has had that team on the rise. Maybe going into this season, I thought they could compete for the SEC East division title. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But you give up 63 on the road at Alabama, and I mean, what else can you do? I mean, when you're facing a team of that caliber, and you don't play that well. You're going to go into Tuscaloosa and lose that game. But look, man, props to Kelvin Joseph, one of the secondary guys over at Kentucky that used to play at LSU. He transferred a couple of years ago. I think he had like 2 or 3 targets with no receptions and like 1 or 2 interceptions. If there's a bright spot for Kentucky in the defeat to Alabama, that's probably it.
Yeah, and it's just, in Kentucky, look, I don't think, they've had some bad breaks this year. And I don't think it's an indictment on their program either, just where Alabama's at right now. And Alabama does play Auburn next. It's really weird thinking that the Iron Bowl is this Saturday because, both teams have games afterwards. That's supposed to be the last game. Obviously, it's not this year. And if they still play the game, because, let's just, you're at the edge of your seat every week because of COVID if the games will be played. But I think right now, Alabama's favored by like 23 or 24 points against Auburn. That game will be in Tuscaloosa, but Auburn on Saturday, they were victorious over Tennessee 30-17. Auburn was down 10-0 early. Bo Nix threw his first ever interception at Jordan Hare Stadium. So I'm thinking this is time for we're getting bad Bo this week. It's not good Bo, it's bad Bo because we had that with Bo Wallace, now we have it with Bo Nix. But they did kind of right the ship. They went 27 unanswered points. To pretty much the turning point of this game was Auburn second half. They go up 13-10. And then Tennessee moves the ball right down the field running the ball. I don't know why they stopped running the ball with Gray. He was really dominant in the running game and the offensive line too. But then they give it to Garantano. The worst thing you could do if you're Tennessee. Smoke Monday, pick six. They go up 20-10. Then they did add on another one to go up 27-10. They kicked a field goal, and Tennessee had a touchdown to make it look a little closer than it was. But overall, I think for Auburn, a lot of concerns in my opinion. The run game, they gave up 222 yards on the ground. The offensive line for Tennessee blew the defensive line of Auburn off the line of scrimmage repeatedly, and I worry about that going against Alabama. They're lethal passing and running. What's Auburn going to be able to do defensively to even slow Alabama down if they can? And for Tennessee, it's Tennessee. They get a lead early, then they fall apart like they have most of the years, and then that's not looking good for them. So I guess that's kind of like my overall thoughts. Brandon, what are you thinking when you see that Auburn score of 30-17?
Yeah, look, I think it's a good win for Auburn. I think it gives them momentum going into Tuscaloosa the next week in that big game. But man, in the first half, I thought Tennessee had it locked up when they were up 10-0. I was like, all right, Auburn's probably not going to move the ball down the field that much tonight. Tennessee's going to wrap this up and get this win. But like you said, Tennessee stopped running the ball. Why would they stop running the ball? You had 222 rushing yards in that game. You probably could have gotten close to 300 had you kept running the ball. And yeah, you may not have won either way, but you probably could have at least scored another touchdown and made it 30-24. But look, Bo Nix, that interception, and he only had one touchdown, 220 yards on 17 of 26 passing. So not a great outing, but not a just an all-out terrible outing either from Nix. I think he's going to have to work on some things this upcoming week in practice, to get ready for Bama. But all around, man, good win for Auburn. Gives them momentum for next week. And look, if there's one game that Auburn's not supposed to win this year that they might be able to win, it's the Alabama game.
Yeah, I heard one of my favorite podcasters, Ryan Russillo, call the Iron Bowl the Gus Malzahn Extension Bowl because this is usually the game where he gets a contract extension because Auburn wins. Another thing concerning for Auburn, look, is Tank Bigsby. He hurt his hip early in the game. I know the ESPN broadcast said it was a lower body injury. You could tell the way he got slammed down. It was probably the hip that is hurting him. If they don't have him, that's big because against Alabama, you need all your offensive weapons you could possibly have, and he is a big one for them. Sean Shivers and DJ Williams played really well on Saturday against Tennessee, holding the fort down at running back. But Tank Bigsby is just different. He has the ability to give you more of the explosive play out of the running game and set up more passing stuff for Eli Stowe, for Anthony Schwartz, who had a big touchdown, and Bo Nix actually didn't know to throw him last night. And then, of course, Seth Williams on the outside, one of the best receivers, in my opinion, in all college football, going to be making a lot of money on Sundays. So if they don't have him, that's going to be big for them because they need all the explosive players they can get.
Yeah, they certainly do because, look, you're going up against the number one team in the country at their home stadium. Yeah, you beat them last year, but if you don't have Nix, that's a big blow to Auburn, man. And, we can sit here and talk about, what Auburn needs to do to, keep Gus. And, well, they need to beat Alabama, first of all. But, you know what? If there's no Tank Bigsby and maybe you don't have Bo Nix, maybe you can keep it kind of close, but bet on Bama. But if you have Nix and Bigsby in there, man, I think Auburn could make this a game next week.
Yeah, and look, Auburn always plays their best against Alabama, so it's going to be interesting there. Oh, Tennessee, this is year 3 of Pruitt, and they are heading in the wrong direction. And I don't say this to kind of like puff my chest out and, and say I was right. But, coming into the year, Tennessee a lot of hype was put on them because they won 6 games in a row last year. But when you look at who they beat, they didn't really beat anybody any good. And they beat the greatest Indiana football team of all time, which that was last year. This is this year. This Indiana team would smoke this Tennessee team. I just want to say that right now after what we saw against Ohio State yesterday. Sorry, Tennessee fans. That's just the truth. Your team is not good. You're heading in the wrong direction. You're 2-5. They started out 2-0. They have lost 5 in a row. This team has not been the same since they held that 21-17 lead in Game 3 against Georgia. They are falling apart. They don't know what they want to do at the quarterback position. It's time to give up on Garantano. You need to go to the next guy, Harrison Bailey. But I'm starting to wonder. I don't think Pruitt gets fired because he has a pretty sizable buyout. For some reason, they gave him an extension. And I heard somebody word about this. Why are we giving coaches extensions that nobody is coming after? Why do people do this? But it happens all the time in college football. But I'm heading in the opposite direction. If they don't fire Pruitt, next year's make or break. But at this point, I don't know how much he can turn it around there at Tennessee. And if they do end up in a year or two getting rid of Pruitt, I don't know where Tennessee can go because you've kind of done this, repeatedly. I mean, maybe Tennessee's just stuck where they are and they're never going to get back to where they once were.
Yeah, I think so, Phillip. Maybe Pruitt isn't the answer at head coach. And look, Tennessee fans, I'm sorry. But when you start the season 2-0, you squash a 21-17 lead at Georgia and lose that game, and then you lose the next 4 games. Something's obviously wrong here. I think it's time for Tennessee to switch to Harrison Bailey at quarterback. I'm not saying just full out give up on Garantano, but if you want to win at least a couple more games, switch things up, put Bailey in there, see what he can work with, and try to right the ship, man, because if they don't right this thing now, going into next year, if they do the same thing they're doing now, Pruitt's going to be gone. And then, Tennessee's going to be stuck in the same situation for, who knows how long, depending on who they would hire. But I just don't see things looking up for Tennessee unless they make some changes.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's just, I mean, what are you going to do? And I'm sure there's going to be some staff changes after this year because, like I said, I don't believe Tennessee will actually move on from Pruitt, but next year is going to be very big for him and the program as all and the whole because it will be year 4 and you were expecting to hit that improvement this year. No one expected him to win the East, but everybody expected you to be the clear cut number 3 team in the East, and that just didn't happen this year. Then we have Missouri defeated South Carolina 17-10. Not going to spend too much time on this one. South Carolina looks like a team that's melded in after Muschamp. I mean, defensively, I guess they played better. They held Missouri to 17 points. They only scored 10. They went through 2 quarterbacks in the game. They only had 283 yards total offense. Of course, Mike Bobo is the interim head coach right now. A good win for Missouri. They are now 3-3. They're playing much better than I thought they would this year with Eli Drinkwitz as their new head coach. Like what they're doing defensively and offensively, they just play good enough in some of these games that they can win. And teams that they're equal talent or better, they are doing well there. Of course, they beat LSU this year too. But yeah, South Carolina looks like a team that just melted in for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think South Carolina's done, man. And look, Phillip, you didn't have to bring up the Missouri LSU game.
But look, context. It's context, my friend. You have to bring up the good wins for Missouri at 3-3. I mean, I did not mean to hurt you there.
No.
I had to do it.
No, all good. But look, Missouri's playing well. I still like Bazilek at quarterback. He's one of my favorite up-and-coming quarterbacks in all of college football. But even after South Carolina fired Will Muschamp last week, I didn't really think that they would do much of anything, and they went through 2 quarterbacks, like you said, against Missouri, only put up 10 points. I think they just need to, pretty much do whatever they can, maybe win 1 or 2 more games, and then focus on the coaching search after the season. But for Missouri, really good win. Look, man, Drinkwitz has Missouri on the come up, and I think they'll be one of the more relevant teams in the East in the next couple of years with him there.
Yeah, we'll see. And look, I think the 3rd spot in the East is up for grabs for anybody in the next couple of years after you get past Georgia and Florida, because they're going to hold down 1 and 2 for a long time with Mullen and Smart there. And that's kind of where I want to go is Georgia. They barely beat Mississippi State 31-24. I think Georgia coming into this game, they were a 25-point favorite. They are ranked 13th in the country. Finally, Brandon, JT Daniels plays. I have been wondering what was going on with this. I know Georgia fans have been curious. I mean, look, Stetson Bennett, first couple weeks, it was a cool story, but the fact of the matter is he was not going to take you to the promised land. Georgia was not and is not getting there until they have an elite thrower. Because we'll look at the top of college football. Look at Florida and Alabama, elite quarterbacks right now. Clemson, Ohio State, elite quarterbacks. And Ian Book at Notre Dame is playing really well, too. He doesn't get a lot of love or respect for what he's done this year. but he is doing great for Notre Dame. All these other teams that are competing for the national championship have good quarterback play. A guy like JT Daniels is who you need. And I don't know if you saw this, but he said he was cleared after the first game of the season, but due to coaching decision is why he hasn't played. And when you look at his numbers, if you did not see the game, he was 28 of 38, 401 yards, 4 touchdowns. Those are records for a first-time starter at Georgia. So just throw that out there. So I know Georgia fans have got to be frustrated right now with what they see that JT Daniels was just now put on the field after what they saw last night.
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of wondering why Georgia wouldn't start Daniels when he was cleared. Because look, they probably could have beat Florida with JT Daniels. They only had the one loss to Bama. They probably could have hung in that game a little more too. Look, for him to come in and go for 401 yards and 4 touchdowns, that's stellar. I know that's a record at Georgia for a first-time starter. That's stellar. But you only beat Mississippi State by 7. And at the beginning of the year, when Mississippi State and LSU played, Mississippi State routed LSU offensively in yards. Well, they're 2-5, and their offense is kind of depleted, but they did put up 24 points. But man, really good day for that Georgia offense. I didn't watch any of this game. I was actually watching the Tennessee Auburn game for a little while, so I didn't get to catch this one. But I saw where Georgia had only won by 7, and I know some Georgia fans were. If you haven't been on Twitter lately, I've seen a lot of quote tweets and stuff about JT Daniels and people just being mad that like he got the start today and he hasn't played before now. And that I really don't understand why the coaching staff of Georgia would put him in. Maybe they were just unsure about him, but I think it's time to let him take the reins at quarterback from here on out.
Yeah, I mean overall for Georgia, and yeah, look, it is Mississippi State, who is not obviously not a good team, and as you said, they have not looked like they had against LSU like at any point during the rest of the year. It has been not great football played by them. Obviously, it's a lot of rebuilding there, Mississippi State, but give them a lot of credit for this game because they came in this game with only 49 scholarship players at the game. They were undermanned, and they still hung in. Their quarterback, I think they finally found who their guy is going to be in Will Rogers, 41 and 52, 336. He had the 1 touchdown. He played well defensively. They held Georgia to 8 yards rushing. I guess one thing for me on this, too, okay, against Florida and Alabama, it's one thing to get lit up. But Mississippi State been struggling offensively. Even in their win against Vanderbilt, it's not like their offense looked great. It was okay, but you're playing Vanderbilt, who's been bad defensively all year. But man, what's happened to the Georgia defense? Because they give up a lot of points here, yards here. Coming into the year, we thought Georgia may be the best defense in the country. I mean, you're not. Nobody's playing great defense anyways in the SEC. But this Georgia defense has been getting exposed these last few weeks, and early against Alabama too.
Yeah, they certainly have. And against Mississippi State, they gave up 358 yards of offense. So I mean, they only gave up 22 rushing yards, but they gave up 336 passing yards. Georgia has issues defensively, and man, a lot of teams in the SEC have issues defensively this year. I don't know what's going on with these defensive coordinators and these defensive units, but man, they're just all across the board in the conference. I mean, LSU, Mississippi State, Georgia, even Alabama's got defensive issues at times. It's just a weird year. All around, but Georgia needs to fix their defensive issues.
Yeah, and I know, and somebody just mentioned it down in the chat, that they have some injuries, but here's my thing about that. You have 5 stars behind 5 stars. I mean, yes, there should be a drop-off, but a Mississippi State team that's been struggling offensively should not be able to put that many points and that much yardage on you. So that's kind of like my point with Georgia. And, yeah, everybody's struggling, and Nick Saban talked about this past week. They said, look, you can get better against air on offense. Quarterbacks and receivers can meet up and they can throw passes. Defenses need to be able to tackle. And now I think also, I guess we need to take a look at that because probably not having a spring is probably a big reason why these defenses aren't playing well because they weren't really hitting and tackling much in the fall because, one, you're going to have COVID issues where players aren't going to be able to play, contact tracing and everything else. But you also don't want to get guys hurt before the season started. So the lack of practice time and actually hitting in practice is probably another reason why these defenses struggle as well.
Yeah, I think so. Just kind of a mixture of everything. No spring ball. Not a lot of stuff going on in fall practice, and then you've got COVID, issues to deal with too. So just a mixture of all that, and it's not just Georgia. It's everybody. But you're right, Phillip. You can't give up that many yards and 24 points to a 2-5 Mississippi State team. I know you've got the injuries, but like you said, they've got 5 stars and 5 stars and more 5 stars. So you've got depth
Yeah.
with with 5-star guys, but you just that's unexcusable. You just cannot give up 24 points and 358 total yards of offense to a 2-5 team.
Yeah, absolutely not. And we'll see what happens with Georgia. See, Georgia's got, let's see, they're playing South Carolina this week, so they should have an easy run of it this week. And then they play Vandy, and they do have to make up the Missouri game. So Georgia, they'll win the rest of their games, no problem there. And as we kind of wrap this thing up, of course, this Tuesday, the first college football playoff rankings do get released, and I will be releasing a podcast Wednesday to be determining on who's going to be the guest. And got anything official and talks with people who are going to be on guest on the show this week. But I'll break that down. We'll look at the playoff rankings Tuesday. But Brandon, when you look at it, the rankings are going to come out on Tuesday night. Who do you think should be the top 4 teams?
Yeah, look, I'm going to go with consensus like I've seen everybody else do. I think it's going to be Bama at 1, Ohio State at 2, Notre Dame at 3, and Clemson at 4, just like the AP poll is. You could put Florida and Cincinnati in there as the first 2 out, and you could make a case for one or even both of those teams, but these are the first initial rankings. I don't think we'll see much of a debate here. I mean, you're just going to basically pull the top 4 teams out of the AP poll and put them in there. Now, they might switch 1 and 2 or 3 and 4, whatever, but I think those are going to be the top 4 teams, and right now they're the 4 deserving teams to get in.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do think, you should put Alabama in 1. You can make debates, I think, between Notre Dame and Ohio State. I would probably just put Notre Dame just because they played more games, had a more meaningful win than Ohio State and Clemson. But it's intriguing what's going to happen down the stretch because you got Florida and A&M sitting there. Of course, Florida will play Alabama. Now, if Florida was to beat Alabama, Florida's getting in, but what do you do with Alabama? Because then that's going to determine what's going on with everybody else. But then we got that matchup between Notre Dame and Clemson, probably again in the ACC Championship. If neither one of them lose from here on out, they play again. Clemson was a close game. It's hard to argue Notre Dame not getting in with 1 loss. And then let's say this. I mean, even in any situation, Florida beats Alabama, or even Alabama beats Florida, you got Texas A&M sitting there who could run the table with 1 loss. They feel like, hey, we're good. We should be in, especially if Florida beats Alabama. Then A&M say, hey, we beat Florida, but then again, Alabama beat Florida. I mean, Alabama beat Texas A&M. So it's kind of craziness. So you've got several situations there where you get a team in. I honestly do not believe Cincinnati and BYU, while you were having tremendous seasons, and congratulations, your opponents you're playing just don't match up to what these other teams are playing. The Big 12's out officially now with Oklahoma State losing on Saturday night. And then I just don't think the Pac-12 – I think the way the people look at them nationally, the Pac-12 last several years is what's going to hurt them. Oregon is a really good team. They're a talented roster, and a USC could be as well. But I just don't think a Pac-12 team has any shot at getting in unless there's a lot of chaos at the top. So we have – I will say this as we close this thing down. We will have a very interesting road to the end of the season.
Yeah, certainly. And I'm just looking at the new AP poll here, Phillip, that dropped here on Sunday. And I don't think the Pac-12 is going to get it, even if Oregon does run the table. I don't see them getting it. Man, before I get to this next thing, can we just have Cincinnati and BYU play in a New Year's Six game to decide who the best Group of 5 team is?
Just tell Cincinnati to drop one of their conference opponents. Let's play now. Let's just play each other now because the Pac-12, hey, if you're Oregon or if you're one of any teams and you lose a game, schedule BYU because BYU has some openings, and now the Pac-12 has said we will allow non-conference games if you lose one of your games. Let's do it. And let's see how good BYU is. But I don't know. I don't know if one of the bigger schools will want to do it with the risk of getting beat by BYU. That's the only thing I worry about. But yeah, man, let's do that. Let's have it. I mean, I want to see BYU play a much better opponent. No disrespect to the teams they played, but I mean, who's the best team they beat this year? Houston.
Yeah. And look, I know there could be a situation with not only Florida and A&M, but Alabama too. With to decide who gets in. But man, what about Northwestern at 5-0? They don't play Ohio State in the regular season. They're probably going to win the rest of their games. They just beat Wisconsin on Saturday. They could get Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. And if they were to, I mean, hypothetically speaking, man, if they were to beat Ohio State in the Big Ten title game, look out, Northwestern could make it, man. I don't see that happening now. I thought Ohio or Indiana would beat Ohio State, and boy, I was wrong. But Northwestern's a team to keep an eye on, man. I don't think Cincinnati and BYU get in. I think Florida and A&M are both going to have a case, depending on how the rest of the season goes out in the SEC championship, how that plays out. But man, if there was one team just to sneak in out of nowhere, I'd take Northwestern.
Yeah, hey, and they deserve to beat Ohio State. And let's face it, after Saturday, Ohio State does not look as unbeatable as they did before. Because I went in that Indiana game saying there's no way congratulations, Indiana. You've had a great open to the season, but you're not beating Ohio State. And then look, they only lose by 7. They were down 35-7. They took a lot of punches from Ohio State early, and they came back and almost pulled that thing off. So it's Ohio State's not as unbeatable as maybe we have thought. So I don't think any of these teams at the top are. Alabama can be beat. Their defense is not great. Just run to the right team. We know Florida's been beat. Clemson's been beat. Notre Dame is not flawless. They can be beat. North Carolina, we don't know which version of North Carolina we're going to get from week to week. They play this Friday. North Carolina could upset Notre Dame. We don't know. I mean, it's very possible. You never know with this season. So, and that's what is fun, though. I will say this because usually we know the 4 teams by now. And we'd be like, okay, let's just get on. Let's finish the season out. Let's get to the playoffs and see who's going to win it all. All these teams that are now competing, they're very flawed teams. They're all really good, but they're also flawed. So it's going to be an interesting run toward the end of the season for sure. And Brandon, I'm going to close this out. I do appreciate you coming on the show. Kind of a throwback to what we did every week last year when we recapped the SEC and talked the national picture of college football on Sunday afternoons. And if the viewers, the listeners, and all that good stuff want to follow you online, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Eisenman_sports. You can also find me over at LSU Wire. You can now catch me over at Last Word on College Football covering the Arkansas Razorbacks. And you can find my LSU Breakdown podcast over on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, and Spreaker.com. And, Phillip, before we go, I know this isn't an NFL show, but I just want to point this out there. Joe Burrow's done for the year in Cincinnati. He got carted off today with a knee injury, so he's done for the year. So
I saw that. That was a horrible injury for him. It looked pretty bad. I was watching Red Zone earlier on Sunday, and I saw that injury. Just when you see a guy grab their leg like that, it's never a good thing. But he does have a positive future for him in the National Football League, and I think this is a big setback, but he has a bright future and should light up the NFL for years to come. And I guess for me, people, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC, and you can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all your favorite podcast platforms. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe, rate, and review. I'll be back later in the week, hopefully to preview the Iron Bowl and talk college football playoff rankings. But until next time, bye-bye.